Hello, my name is Karen Graham, and this screencast is for a doctoral level course called Using Narrative Inquiry in Qualitative Research. Today, I will be talking about validity. Welcome, and let's get started. Good research has a purpose, and ours today will be to learn what validity is, why it's important, how to ensure or confirm your qualitative research is valid, and how validity is shown using narrative inquiry. By the end of this video presentation, you will be able to define the term validity, explain its importance in qualitative research, name at least one way to check for validity, and be able to discuss how validity is ensured in narrative inquiry. To get us started, we will look at validity through different points of view in data collection surrounding this image. This iconic photograph was taken during the American Great Depression of the 1930s. Looking at this photograph and knowing the time frame it was taken do not provide many details about this woman and the two children with her in the picture. The photographer, Dorothea Lange, entitled this shot taken in 1936 as Migrant Mother. The Library of Congress captioned it. Looking at these added details, we now have more information about the photo, such as the location it was taken, her occupation, and how many children she had. If you were to see this photograph with the captioning and knowing the information came from the Library of Congress, would that influence your opinion on the accuracy of the details? Because we know the photographer provided the details and this established, esteemed institution captioned it, would that make what we've read seem accurate? The photographer's field note stated 7 hungry children. Father is native Californian, destitute in pea pickers' camp because of failure of the early pea crops. These people had just sold their tires to buy food. The photographer later wrote information she remembered from the encounter with this mother and her family. I did not ask her her name or her history. She told me her age, that she was 32. She said they'd been living on frozen vegetables from the surrounding fields and birds that the children killed. She'd just sold the tires from her car to buy food. The family of the mother in this photograph was interviewed many years later after her death about their experiences with the photographer and having their picture taken. Her children shared candid stories from that day they remembered and information their mother had told them. The mother, Florence Leona Christie, claimed Lange never asked her questions and got many of the details incorrect. Troy Owens, one of her sons, shared, "There's no way we sold our tires because we didn't have any to sell. The only ones we had were on the Hudson and we drove off in them. I don't believe Dorothea Lange was lying. I just think she had one story mixed up with another, or she was borrowing to fill in what she didn't have." The information learned in the interview with the family sheds a bit of light on family circumstances and that some of the previously shared details about the subjects in this iconic photograph may have been incorrect. Why does all this matter and what does it have to do with validity in qualitative research, you might ask? These and many other important questions will be answered as we learn about validity in this presentation. Quantitative research methods have long been considered the gold standard for research. That is, until the latter part of the 20th century. Since then, researchers have found quantitative methods to be less effective when delving into human experiences. In fact, according to LICO, qualitative methods allow researchers to holistically explore human experiences in natural settings featuring participant voices. With this increase in acceptance of using qualitative research methods to understand human experiences comes a rising demand to employ criteria, strategies, and tools to ensure the quality, rigor, and validity of these methods. Qualitative research aims to seek answers for questions of how, where, when, who, what, why, with a perspective to build a theory or refute an existing theory, according to Leon. For the next few minutes, we will explore the concept of validity, understand why methods to ensure validity are necessary, and what researchers can do to increase the validity of their work. Validity in qualitative research means appropriateness of the tools, processes, and data. According to Leung, 2015, appropriateness is measured in several ways. Are the research questions valid for the desired outcome? Is the choice of methodology appropriate for researching the research questions and answering them? Is the research design valid for the methodology? Are sampling and data analysis appropriate? And are the results and conclusions valid for the sample and the context? So, what is validity in qualitative research? The answer is, it depends. Validity depends on the type, purpose of, and epistemological framework used in the research, as well as it should reflect on the researcher's ontological viewpoints. And finally, validity criteria take time and energy to implement successfully. So just as purpose, context, and sample determine research methods, type, purpose, epistemology, and ontology determine measures of validity. Since roughly the 1970s, increasing criticism of the reliability and objectivity of qualitative research has resulted in a growing interest in establishing more rigorous criteria and methodological standards. This attention has somewhat shifted from standards for the implementation of the study by the researcher to verification strategies for evaluating the credibility of qualitative findings by external reviewers. In essence, instead of relying on the researcher to implement traditional positivistic quantitative methods for measuring reliability, external reviewers or readers now evaluate research credibility using qualitative research methods. There are many researchers we could look to for qualitative methodologies to ensure validity, but due to time constraints, we will focus on one set of co-researchers, Guba and Lincoln, who were the first to establish criteria for validity. Egon Guba and Ivana Lincoln are a husband and wife team who were the first to develop specific criteria for evaluation of qualitative research, because they believe that radical reconfigurations of validity leave researchers with multiple, sometimes conflicting mandates for what constitutes rigorous research. Lincoln and Guba therefore established evaluative criteria for qualitative research. They believed that trustworthiness of a research study was important to evaluating its worth. Trustworthiness involves establishing, first, credibility. According to Houghton et al., credibility is confidence in the truth of the findings or the plausibility and significance of the findings, which are made possible when the study has been conducted with integrity and consistency. Strategies that address credibility are prolonged engagement and persistent observation, which is time in the field, triangulation, which is using multiple forms of data or points of view, peer debriefing. Another researcher reads research report to support data analysis. Member checking. Participants read transcripts and/or analysis for representational fairness. The second criteria is transferability. According to Leninger, transferability is showing that the findings have applicability in other contexts, which refers to whether particular findings from a qualitative study can be transferred to another similar context or situations and still preserve the particularized meaning, interpretations, and inferences from the completed study, usually through thick descriptions. These are descriptions that are written using rich, vivid details to show, not tell, the reader what happened, why it happened, who it happened to, etc. The third criteria is dependability. According to Granum and Lundman, dependability is showing that the findings are consistent and could be repeated or showing the unchanging nature of the data. And the last criteria is confirmability. Returning to Houghton et al., confirmability is a degree of neutrality or the extent to which the findings of a study are shaped by the respondents and not researcher bias, motivation, or interest. Confirmability is the objectivity and precision of the data. The strategies to address dependability and confirmability are audit trail, which is an honest, true account of the entire research process, many times recorded in the field journal, and reflexivity, which is the self-awareness of the researcher. Now, thinking about these evaluative criteria and the listed strategies, as you look at this picture of the two women, what qualitative research methods from the previous slide or validation strategies do you see in action? Thinking about how validity may be established, we turn to qualitative researchers. Green stated validity comes from questioning, the what and the why. Noble and Smith argue validity or trustworthiness should be built into the research design. Leung, 2015, believed the methodology must allow readers to understand the findings contextually and culturally. And Green posited that validity can be found in the researcher's reflexivity, oftentimes in field journals. So using the evaluative criteria established by Goob and Lincoln and ensuring validity through questioning research design, context and culture, and reflexivity, Green and Lico warn of possible limitations. Data collection and our findings without consideration for validity could mean there is little knowledge of research methodology. Validity may be discounted based on ontology and epistemological differences. Qualitative research has strong roots in positivism, which is quantitative research, so epistemological and ontological differences may be a factor for the reader. Sometimes ensuring validity is not feasible in terms of time and resources, especially with large sample sizes. Continuing our journey through the qualitative research topic of validity, we now move into a more specific focus, validity and narrative inquiry. There are several key narrative scholars and researchers in the narrative inquiry field, such as Clendenin and Conley, Lebov and Waletsky, G. Reisman, and Kim, but today we will focus on Donna Polkinghorne. Polkinghorne teaches us that before the reformist movement, qualitative researchers modeled their approach to validation after traditional quantitative positivistic ways of measuring. However, social science reformers believed that social sciences needed to be more fully exploring human experiences, which were outside the identity of traditional validity measures. Moving forward, the ideas about validity were no longer based on quantitative measures, but on the gradation in confidence readers can have on proposed claims. Polkinghorne argued validity judgments do not yield simple acceptance or non-acceptance responses. Instead, they are about the likelihood or probability that the claim is so. Rich details and descriptions attest to a story's validity. And different kinds of knowledge claims need different kinds of evidence and arguments to be considered valid. So putting all this together, Polkinghorne believed validity was a function of intersubjective judgment. A statement's validity rests on a consensus within a community of speakers. The members of a community of speakers determine how likely a statement is to be true based on their beliefs about the subject, which means validity is not a fixed ideal. Polkinghorne also believed narrative research involved two separate performances, data collection and data analysis, and that those performances influence how well researchers can situate their arguments to convince readers of the plausibility, credibleness, or trustworthiness of their claims. He wrote, "The purpose of the validation process is to convince readers of the likelihood that the support for the claim is strong enough that the claim can serve as a basis for understanding of and action in the human realm." And finally, readers should be able to track the arguments presented so they can make their own judgment as to validity of findings. In narrative inquiry, validity is about the evidence of assembled text and how well researchers are able to express the actual meaning experienced by the participants. Just as there are limitations to ensuring validity in qualitative research in general, according to Polkinghorne, there are threats to validity in narrative inquiry. He believed validity threats arise in narrative research because the language descriptions given by participants of their experienced meaning is not a mirrored reflection of this meaning. The task of the researcher is to produce articulations that lessen the distance between what is said by participants about their experienced meaning and the experienced meaning itself. It is important that narrative researchers accurately portray their participants' life experiences in ways that allow their readers to understand them and to find validity in the written expression of those experiences. Wrapping up our video presentation today, we learned about validity, why it is important, how it is ensured, and how to show validity in narrative inquiry. Returning to our introductory visual story of Migrant Mother, and to the question of what that photograph and the ensuing conflict had about that iconic picture have to do with validity and why does it matter? The way the photographer Miss Lang recorded the encounter and spoke about it were not consistent with how Florence Christie, the mother, remembered the moment in time. The participant's voice was not heard. She was not given a chance to member check. There was no evidence of self-reflexivity. There was no prolonged engagement with the participant, and only a few words were written about that time. Validity here is questionable. I hope you enjoyed the screencast. Next time we tackle researcher ethics and how they influence qualitative research methods.